Hey, it's recording. All right, my first recording of 2022. This is something special. So, why and how did Hitler Nazify the cults? So, I'm going to start with the why. Hitler wanted to have total power. And to have total power in a country, to have it all, you've got to reverse the separation of powers. So, in the French and American revolutions, a man called Montesquieu, he said that power had to be separated. And so you have the executive, you have a legislative, and you have a judiciary. Now, Hitler had successfully combined the role of the Reich president and the Reich chancellor into Führer. But he had to do this for the courts. He had to Nazify the courts as well, because what a court does, what the judiciary does, is decide how laws are interpreted. And he couldn't have his laws, which were anti-Semitic and anti-communist, being contradicted by the courts. So to have total power, you must be in control of the courts. So he didn't want the courts interfering on his purges, especially on the communists and the Jews of Germany. And there were obviously other enemies inside Germany as well. So he wanted to deal with them. So how did he do it? How did Hitler Nazify the courts? Well, the first thing he did was that he made a National Socialist League for the maintenance of the law. Okay? And this made sure that all judges had to join this. And if they refused to join, they couldn't be a judge. So effectively, he had Nazified all the judges in Germany. That's the first thing he did. Secondly, he appointed a puppet leader or a lackey, a yes man, into the role of president of the German Academy of Law. And his name is Hans Frank. And he said this quote: "The basis for interpreting all law is the Nazi philosophy." Okay, now in the extended quote, he says you can derive law from Hitler's speeches. So that's very, very interesting indeed. Trial by jury was banned. Now, the German public, even though they had mass support for the Nazis, they could be unreliable, Nathan. We don't like that, do we? We don't like unreliability, and Hitler certainly did not. So he banned trial by jury, and this meant that those Nazified judges were effectively judge, jury, and executioner. And executioner, they often were. Okay, they often were. And a great example of this was that the People's Courts were set up in 1934. And 534 people were sentenced to death because of political offences. Now, I think something like 8 had been done pre-Nazi between 1930 and 1932. So you can see that that statistic is actually quite glaring there. And raving Roland Freisler, who's probably the most well-known face of the Nazi regime, he put 90% of all defendants to death. So if you were going to Roland Freisler as a defendant, you had very little rights. And let's not forget that the defense lawyers' powers have been reduced in the Nazi regime as well. So your rights in a court case were very small, too slim. Okay. Right, and on that note, I'm going to end this video because I think that was well executed, if I do say so